Hello students, welcome again to a new session at Educators Plus. I am Akarshi, your English faculty at Educators Plus. So students, if you are following my lecture, you must have been through the British literature which I have taught in my previous lectures. So we have completed in the last session all the important writers and their works of British literature, and from this class I will be beginning from American literature. ठीक है? So हमने British literature पढ़ा, उससे question solve करे. I hope you have got a hang of it and you have taken back home a lot of substance from those lectures. Okay, and again, in case you have any problems, so we'll coming with more sessions on practice sessions, you can say, on the previous year's questions. Fine. And today we are going to start with American literature, so please stay tuned throughout the session and please focus on what I am teaching. Okay, first of all, let me know in the chat box, am I audible and visible to you properly? Please let me know in the chat box, am I audible and visible to you properly so that I can begin the session? Fine. So today we are first going to start about the American literature. So first of all, we are going to study about the history of American literature. ठीक है? So as you know that British literature have various ages. So उतनी ज़्यादा आपसे deeply questions नहीं पूछे जाते in exam as compared to the British literature. So most of the writers you have to just know the background of them and the important work and some only titles you have to remember. But before studying the American writers, you should know what was the aftermath, that or what was the background according to which they were writing in their works. Yes, good morning Devendra. Fine. So as you know that like other some literature, you can say American literature was shaped by the history of the country that produced it. Okay, and for almost a century and a half, American was merely a group of colonies. And how many colonies were there? There were 13 colonies. ठीक है, अगर आपने हिस्ट्री में भी पढ़ा होगा that America was first of all the 13 colonies, a group of 30 colonies which were directly ruled by the British people or British authorities. Okay, and after a successful rebellion against the motherland, America became the United States, a nation. So as India was actually colonized by British authorities, similarly America was also being colonized by the British people. Fine. And on July 1776, I guess, so the second, you can say the Second Continental Conference meeting was held, and which declared the independence of America. And then after that, America came to be known as the United States of America. So, जो United States of America, जो नाम है अमेरिका का, that came after the when the America was declared independent. Okay. So then only this name came, but earlier these were only the group of 13 colonies which were directly ruled by the British people. And these 13 colonies on the, you can say the coast of present day United States were heavily influenced by the British literature. So that's why why in the today in literature you have two kind of language, that is British English and American English. Why? Because earlier the British English was ruling all over the world. ठीक है, इंडिया में भी ब्रिटिश इंग्लिश थी, अमेरिका में ब्रिटिश इंग्लिश थी, बट देन अमेरिका एज अ काइंड ऑफ रिवोल्ट थॉट कि व्हाई वी शुड बी after getting independent, why we are following the literature which is actually formed by the British people. So that's why as a revolt, American literature or American English evolved. That's why you see that most of the slangs, okay, most of the rough language, or you can say gibberish, are found in American English. Why? Because it was a kind of revolt against the British authorities. Okay, is this clear? Okay, so one of the most important factor of American literature was also the American Civil War. ठीक है, so ये जो American Civil War है, most of the writing of American literature, or you can say most of the movements of the American literature, is also the kind of was influenced by the American Civil War. And the central center of the war was a status of slavery. Okay, why this war was actually waged? It was waged because to end the slavery which is actually taking place in America. And what was the slavery all about? Basically, these British authorities was directly ruling these three colonies, ठीक है, three colonies America, and because these three people of three colonies were the slaves of the British authorities, and to end the slavery by the British people, American revolted, which resulted in the American Civil War. Okay, and this basically, it was a kind of this American Civil War was a kind of experiment of slavery into newly acquired land after the Mexican American War. And in the northern state, what happened, this industry largely drove the slavery and immoral, and actually it also shows that many people in the north and south believe that slavery was immoral and wrong. It was not, we are not slaves, we have to be independent, and that's why they actually fought against the British society. And who was actually known as the can say the pioneer who actually initiated this thing, and he ended slavery, it was Abraham Lincoln. ठीक है, Abraham Lincoln, in around November 1860, he actually won the presidential election on anti-slavery platform, and war broke between the British societies and American, and as a result American became independent. And that's why Abraham Lincoln has been worshipped by the American people. Why? Because he was the one who actually took initiative to end the slavery in America. Fine, is it clear? Any problem? Okay, so let's talk about some some points about America, that it is basically the American, which actually in the 19th century Romanticism also emerged in British as well as America, but this British people used to focus more on you can say the nature. Okay, they were actually showing the strength of the British people, and they were showing the nature, whereas American literature, the writers emphasize on the writing dealing with the national imagination, and it goes to create basically a platform where everybody is free and everybody is actually showing the glorious American literature. ठीक है, so writers in the British literature in the 19th century were not focusing on the glorification of the British people, they were focusing on nature, whereas at the same time conjunctly literature was also going in America, which actually emphasized about the you can say the glorification of the American people. So that's why the literary works which emerged during this period in 19th century in America was the corpus of the American literature. Okay, and they used to depict the socio-political scenario, economic scenario of the people of the USA. Fine. So I hope I've made myself clear, because I have explained to you what was the background of this American literature and how it was kind of a reaction towards the slavery, or you can say the slavery attitude of the British people. So they were used to consider these people of 13 colonies as slaves. Okay, and that's why these people revolted, and it led to the American independence, and now the writers gained freedom to write their work. So in the initial days, those writers who emerged during this period of time used to actually glorify America in their works. ठीक है? Okay, so this was all about American literature. Let's move ahead. Okay, so the first writer that comes into play is Harriet Beecher Stowe. Okay, so Harriet Beecher Stowe was the first writer who actually started writing. No, he was not the first writer, but he's one of the writers in this initial stage, like writers like Dr. Irving, so we'll be Washington Irving. Okay, all these writers started writing. James Cooper, we'll be coming to that, but first let's study about the Harriet Beecher Stowe. So Harriet Beecher Stowe is one of the famous writer. So आपको जब American literature आप पढ़ते हो तो आपको उसके writers की इतनी depth में नहीं जाना होता है, because the question doesn't come from that point of view. ठीक है, so that's why I'm just focusing on the works of the writers in this lecture. ब्रिटिश में आपको राइटर के बारे में पूछा जाता है, बिकॉज ब्रिटिश वॉज यूज टू फॉर्म 60% ऑफ योर एग्जामिनेशन. America, European, world literature, or you can say that post-colonial literature, all these literature forms just a small part of it. Okay, so that's why you don't have to go depth of the writer, you just have to go in the depth of the word, and sometimes you just have to remember the title of their works. Okay. Fine. Now, the first writer, that is Harriet Beecher Stowe. So you have to remember that he has written two of the works, that is Uncle. Just a minute. Okay, so you just have to remember that he has written two of the work, that is Harriet Beecher Stowe, Uncle Tom's Cabin and Key to Uncle Tom's Cabin. Just a minute, like something is wrong with this. Okay. Mm. Okay, yes, it's not fine. Sorry for the disturbance, because this board is not functioning well today. Fine. So you can say that Harriet Beecher Stowe has written two of the works, Uncle Tom's Cabin and Key to Uncle Tom's Cabin. Now you have to remember that Uncle Tom's Cabin contributed so much to popular feelings against slavery that it is actually cited among the causes of American Civil War. Okay, so here the Tom was actually depicted as a slave. Okay, so that's why it was actually considered a reaction towards the slavery notion of the Americans, and that's why it has been considered, the Uncle Tom Cabin has been considered as one of the reaction against American Civil War. Okay, no, sorry, against slavery, and it actually resulted in the emergence of the, or you can say that it is the cause of the emergence of American Civil War. Okay, so I will dictate today because I don't think so the pen is working today. Okay, so this was considered as the cause of American Civil War. Okay, it was considered a cause of American Civil War, and it was a kind of a reaction towards slavery. Now, this is the key to Uncle Tom's Cabin. After the successful, after the success of the Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe. So this a key to Uncle Tom's Cabin as a written to actually celebrate Uncle Tom, Tom in the particular work. So let me tell you something about Uncle Tom's Cabin. So Uncle Tom's Cabin is a story of Uncle Tom, which was depicted as a saintly, dignified slave. Okay, and while he was transported by boat to an auction which was taking place in New Orleans. Okay, so आपको जगह का नाम याद रखना है. It was New Orleans. Okay, New Orleans is a place where the auction was taking place of the slaves, and Tom was actually transported to that particular place. Okay, there he meets a lady named as Eva. Okay, and Eva and Tom became friends. So after frail Eva's health began to decline, and on the deathbed, she asked his father, her father, to actually free all the slaves that were actually under the, or you can say that under the prison under her father. Okay, then what happened when he was about to release the slave, he was killed. Her father was killed, and then what happens, Tom actually was taken by another authority, that is Simon Legree, and Tom was the owner of it. Okay, Tom's new owner was Simon Legree, and there what happened, this Simon Legree tortures Tom, and he actually he used to beat him a lot. Okay, and he beat him like totally a devil. Okay, and why he was actually beating Tom? Because he wanted to know the history of the other released slaves. ठीक है, वो कहाँ गए, कैसे गए, the whereabouts of the released slaves, this person wants to know. But Tom maintains a statistically, you can say, a Christian attitude toward his own suffering. Okay, and Stowe, this Harriet Beecher Stowe, has used Tom's death with echoes of क्राइस्ट, ठीक है। सो ये आपका क्वेश्चन में पूछा गया है कि जो टॉम वाज अ रिप्रेजेंटेशन और ऑफ क्राइस्ट इन दिस वर्क, अंकल टॉम्स कैबिन। Is it clear? Okay. Next is next is Washington Irving, ठीक है। So this was again a important writer of this particular period, and you should remember that he has written two of the famous work, The Legend of Sleeping Hollow. This is the first work, and The Rip Van Winkle is the second work, ठीक है। So first of all, the main important point of Washington Irving, he was the first American writers to use a pseudonym, ठीक है। मैंने आपको बताया था that writers used to conceal their identity, in order to conceal their identity they used to use pseudonyms, ठीक है। So Jonathan Old Wildstyle, so he was a person who has used the pseudonym of Jonathan Oldstyle, and he was the first American writer to use pseudonym. ठीक है, he was the first American writer to use pseudonym. Okay, and he has written the मतलब उसने काफी works लिखे, but these are two of the important works which you have to remember. So he basically, The Legend of Sleeping Hollow is considered to be the most you can say the famous work of this Irving, and it is considered that it is American spirit इसमें दिखाए गए, because the soldier was actually injured in the fight and his head was cut off, ठीक है, but still he continued to fight. So it shows the spirit of independence or spirit of American people towards these kind of you can say the atrocities which they are facing in their life. Next is Rip Van Winkle. So here is a man, ठीक है, उसकी वाइफ ने बोलते हैं कि प्लीज गो ऑन द माउंटेन्स टू ग्रेस द कैटल्स. ओके, सो दिस मैन टेक विद हिम द कैटल एंड सडनली over there on the mountain he found a door, ठीक है. When he opened the door, the light came or reflected towards on his face, and he went inside that door, ठीक है, and he became unconscious. So when he was brought back to consciousness, he thought just few hours has passed, but actually 20 years has passed, ठीक है. So जब वो घर लौटता है तो he thought कि मैं तो grazing करने गया था, now I'm coming back to my house, but actually 20 years has passed. His wife has become old, but he was a person who was the actually the, you can say that witness to both the new and the old America, ठीक है. जो वो पहले जब वो grazing करने जाता है, that was old America. After 20 years, there were a lot of reforms, lot of changes has brought to America, and he came back home. So he was a kind of, you can say, a symbol to have witnessed both new and old America. Fine. Okay. Also remember this, he is basically known for these two short stories. These were short stories, and it was published under the collection known as the Sketchbook of Geoffrey Crayon, and it is a kind of a collection of 34 essays and short stories. And as I told you, the Rip Van Winkle is most important because इससे आपके questions आते हैं, and Legend of a Sleeping Hollow से भी आते हैं, ठीक है. So this Legend of a Sleeping Hollow is a kind of a gothic story, and it actually shows the and it was actually famous on Halloween because of the headless soldier, ठीक है. As I told you, his head was cut in the war, and he still continued to fight. So that's why this kind of figure of headless soldier has been used in Halloweens to actually shows the to actually ignite terror. So that's why it is considered to be a gothic story. Okay, is this clear? Any questions? So that's why it is considered a gothic story. Okay, let's move ahead now. Today the board is not functioning properly, so that's why I have to change it again and again. Okay, so next is James Cooper, ठीक है. So James Cooper is another important writer of the American age, and he is famous for actually making famous the cowboy image of the Americans, ठीक है. कौन सी उसने करा? Cowboy image of the Americans उसने famous करा था, ठीक है. And this James Cooper is also known as the romancer of the seas. He is also known as the romancer of the seas. You have to remember this point. It's a very important point that he is known as the romancer of the seas, and he has actually made famous the cowboy image. Okay, a person wearing, you know, leather boots, a jacket, hat. So this kind of image was made famous by Cooper, the cowboy image. Okay, and the important works are Precautions, Spy, लेदर स्टॉकिंग टेल्स एंड द लास्ट ऑफ द मोहिकन्स. ठीक है, ये ऐसे लिखा हुआ था बट ये दूसरे फॉर्मेट में ऐसे ऐसे आ गया. So just write down in your notebook that Precaution, The Spy, Leather Stocking Tales and The Last of the Mohicans are some of his important work. So now this Precaution is kind of a, you can say, imitation of Jane Austen novels. So kind of a, you know, the setting, okay, which Jane Austen used to portray in her work. So similarly, in Precaution also, you can say that it was a kind of imitation of Jane Austen novels. Okay, it is a kind of imitation of the Jane Austen novels, and this work, The Spy. Okay, so The Spy, Precautions, all these are very famous work of James Cooper. And as I told you that Precaution was the imitation of the Jane Austen. And what kind of an imitation was, as I told you that in my lecture, Jane Austen is considered as a novelist of manners. Okay, so whatever gentry manners Jane Austen used to depict in her work, similar manners has been depicted in the work Precautions by James Cooper. Okay, and it's considered as the first novel by Cooper. ठीक है, तो ये जो Precaution है ये फर्स्ट नॉवेल थी. ओके, okay, next is The Spy. Just the name you have to remember, nothing, you don't have to go in the detail, but you should remember The Spy was based on author or you can say a British novelist, you can Sir Walter Scott. Okay, so जिसकी वेवर्ली novels होती थी, जिसका जो वेवर्ली novels, उसकी जो novels, you know, फेमस थी. तो सिमिलरली वेबरली नॉवेल्स का जो भी उसमें जो कैरेक्टर से डिपिक्शन होता था, और स्टोरी द एडवेंचर ऑफ रोमांस that set in 18th century or 18th century Scotland. So that kind of a romance has been depicted in Spy also. So you can say it was an adaptation of Scott's novels. ठीक है, it is an adaptation of Scott's novel. A similar 18th century Scottish land has been portrayed in The Spy as well. Next is Leatherstocking Tales. So Leatherstocking novels has been made famous by this James Cooper, and it is a collection of 5 novels. ठीक है, तो ये Leatherstocking जो Tales है ये collection of 5 novels है, एंड सबसे उसकी फेमस नॉवेल है द लास्ट ऑफ द मोहिकन्स. ठीक है, तो सबसे फेमस उसका है लास्ट ऑफ द मोहिकन्स. सो इट इज अ कलेक्शन ऑफ 5 नॉवेल्स, एंड आउट ऑफ दीज द लास्ट ऑफ द मोहिकन्स इज द मोस्ट फेमस नॉवेल. एंड यू शुड रिमेंबर द मेन कैरेक्टर इन दिस सीरीज इज नैटी बम्पू. ठीक है, नैटी बम्पू Natty Bumppo is the most important character of this particular work, and all these novels actually deals with the adventure of Natty Bumppo. And this book covers the entire, you can say, the adult life or from young manhood to old age of Natty Bumppo, and it is written or published in a very chronological order. ठीक है, जो आपकी जो series of the 5 novels है, उसमें पहले हर novels का उसका काइंड ऑफ क्रोनोलॉजिकल उसने सीक्वेंस दिया कि फेल हाउ वाज ही यंग मैनहुड, देन ही केम टू ओल्ड एज, ऑल वाज डिस्क्रिप्शन. एंड सबसे ज्यादा उसमें इंपॉर्टेंट है लास्ट ऑफ द मोहिकन्स, इसका क्वेश्चन आता है. ठीक है, सो दिस इज द स्टोरी अबाउट नैटी बम्पो एडवेंचर. ही वाज बेसिकली हायर्ड एज अ as a kind of a caretaker for the 2 girls of Colonel, and when they were going on a journey, these 2 girls were attacked by some some creatures, and that Natty Bumppo fought against them to save these 2 girls. Okay, so it is actually showing the heroism of Natty Bumppo. Fine. Okay, let's move ahead. नेक्स्ट इज विलियम कूलन ब्राइट. ठीक है, तो ये भी बहुत ही इम्पॉर्टेंट राइटर है ऑफ द अमेरिकन लिटरेचर, एंड ही हैज रिटन सम ऑफ द फेमस वर्क दैट इज Thanatopsis and Free Thanatopsis. ठीक है, and he is also the part of the Fireside Poets. So we will be discussing about the Fireside Poets first let's understand about Thanatopsis. ठीक है? So Thanatopsis is actually a Greek word which means meditation on death. ठीक है? It is a Greek word which means in English meditation of death. Okay? And he has written, and only just one work you have to remember. इसी से क्वेश्चन आते हैं, इसके और वर्क से क्वेश्चन इतने ज़्यादा नहीं आते. So just you have to remember that Thanatopsis has been written by William Cullen Bryant, and it means that it is meditation on death. So the main theme is about death. Okay, and you have to just remember the poem always has death in its size. So one of the speaker's main goals seems simply to make death and his inevitability vivid for that poem's reader. So he basically has glorified death in this particular work, Thanatopsis. Okay, and this William Cullen Bryant is also known as the father of American poetry. ठीक है? Only this you have to remember about William Cullen Bryant. Fine. Let's move ahead. Okay, let's study about fireside poets. So you just have to remember the names: Henry Longfellow, William Cullen Bryant, John Grenfell Whittier, and James Russell Lowell. ठीक है? These are the fireside poets. ठीक है? So you just have to remember that who are the fireside poets, because ये जो आपके जो movements हैं, ये जो आपके titles हैं, ये आपके question में पूछे जाते हैं. And इस पे कैसे questions आते हैं कि just have to eliminate the name, or you just have to choose from the option who is one of the fireside poet. Okay, and these poets were actually the main writers of the American revival, and they were popular in America in the later half of the 19th century. Now what kind of poetry these fireside poets used to write? So their poetry was read both around kind of you say that household fireside and both at home. ठीक है? So these poetries are meant to be read around fireside location and at home, and basically the narrator, or you can say the people who used to read aloud these poetry were the father and mother of the gathered family. ठीक है? And in school also rooms where they inculcated wisdom and morals and patriotic feelings in American young people. So these are actually poetries meant for the young people to inculcate the morals, or you can say wisdom, the patriotism of the American society. So these fireside poets were famous for those kind of poetry, and they are meant to be recited both at home and along the fireside. Okay, so basically in the initial days, Ralph Waldo Emerson is also occasionally included in the fireside poetry, but later it was dismissed. And the name fireside poetry derived from popularity of their writing, which actually was a source of entertainment for families gathered around the fire at home. जैसे हम bonfire घर पे करते हैं, अगर हम bonfire करके we all the family members sit around that bonfire and हम कुछ poetry recite कर रहे हैं. So those poets used to do the same kind of scenario, and that's why they came under the name of fireside poets. Fine? Is this clear? Okay, so if you are enjoying the session, please like the session. Also, you have to remember that the name was further actually inspired by Longfellow poetry collection, The Seaside and the Fireside. ठीक है? तो Longfellow ने एक वर्क लिखा था, The Seaside and Fireside. ठीक है? तो उस after his work, the title came into the play. Okay, Fireside. The title came into the play, and these poets came to be known as fireside poets. Okay, is this clear? You just have to remember, it's a very important point. यहाँ पे question आ सकता है कि from whose work, और whose work, और ये भी work का नाम भी आ सकता है, किससे fireside poets the name has been derived. It has been derived from Longfellow's work, The Seaside and the Fireside. Okay, and Lowell also published a work known as The Fireside Travels, which actually helps to solidify the title. ठीक है? So Fireside Travels was a work by Lowell. So these are the two important work of the fireside poets, one by Longfellow, one by Lowell, and these actually both the works helps to solidify the title Fireside Poets. Is this clear? Any problem? You can ask in the chat box. If you have not understood anything, I can explain it again. Okay, let's move to the next writer. Okay, let's move to the transcendental writers. The transcendental writers are also the very famous writers of this particular age, or you can say the literature. First of all, you have to remember that what is transcendentalism in literature. Okay? So basically, transcendentalism is a philosophical movement that developed in the late 19th century. Okay? In the United States. So कहाँ पे develop हुआ था? In the late 19th century in USA. ठीक है, तो यूएसए में दिस वाज philosophical movement that developed in the late 19th century, and the core belief of this particular movement was the inherent goodness of people. ठीक है, the people have born with inherent goodness, सब अंदर से अच्छे होते हैं. You should focus on the beauty of the inner inside, what is inside a human being. ठीक है, आप ऊपर की beauty से you cannot judge a person, because they used to believe that अंदर से everybody is good, and they have a very deep gratitude and appreciation for nature, not only for aesthetic purpose but also as a tool to observe and understand the you can say the structured workings or inner workings of the natural world. तो उनको पता है nature के, they were very much like similarly in the British age of romanticism, Wordsworth, Coleridge, they used to worship nature. So similarly, the 19th century, उसके parallelly America में भी transcendentalism movement चल रहा था, which and here the writers of this particular movement had a very deep gratitude and appreciation for nature, and they used to believe in the inherent goodness of people. Fine. So this was about transcendentalism. Any problem? You can ask in the chat box. Okay. Also, just remember about transcendentalism that it emerged from English and you can say the German Romanticism, the skepticism of David Hume, and it actually shows the transcendental philosophy of Kant and German idealism as well. Okay, so Kant, Immanuel Kant, these were also the famous writers from which the English Romanticism, or you can say the Romantic age of British literature, was also influenced. So from these sources only, or from these writers only, American literature, maybe transcendentalism was influenced. Okay, and it was also strongly influenced by the Hindu texts of philosophy and the mind, which actually used to focus on the mind and spirituality, especially the Upanishads. Okay, and the writers of this movement are Emerson, Margaret Fuller, and Henry David Thoreau. So these were the writers of this particular age, or you can say the movement, who were famous for writing texts which were influenced by nature, or they used to show the inherent goodness of human being. Is this clear? Any problem? Okay, so this first writer is American Walter Emerson. He is known as the intellectual father of American literary movement. Okay, he is known as the American intellectual father of American literary movement, also of American liberation. Okay, so when the America became liberated, or you can say when he was freed from the British authorities, so this person Emerson has written some works which celebrated this independence of the Americans. Okay, now first is the American scholar. Okay, so you must have studied about the American scholar in your maybe UG or PG, and you must be knowing it is a kind of a speech. Okay, and basically it is considered to be America's intellectual declarator of independence. Okay, you should remember that it is considered as America's intellectual declaration of independence, and it is 1837 speech. Okay, it is the 1837 speech which actually decides or which actually shows the fate of the scholar, American scholar. If America started actually living independent, they starting taking out old literature, when the scholars started working hard towards independence, then ultimately a scholar which reached to a height and we will be equal to the British society. Okay, so that's why it is kind of speech, and that's why it is known as America Intellectual Declaration of Independence. Intellectual, why? Because it was dealt with the future of the scholars. Okay, so because the young minds, the young youths are the fate of the society, and that's why this is something related to intellectual part. Okay, is it clear? Okay, so उसने एक और वर्क लिखा था, he has written one more work named as Nature. ठीक है, जो नेचर वर्क था बाय एमर्सन, इट इज नोन एज बाइबल ऑफ ट्रांसेंडेंटलिज्म. ओके, उसका जो वर्क था नेचर, इट इज ऑल्सो नोन एज बाइबल ऑफ transcendentalism, and he has also written the work Self-Reliance. Now this Self-Reliance is another important work of Emerson, and it talks about the concept of soul and oversoul. ठीक है, and also the idea like the need for each individual to avoid you can say that false consistency and follow his own institutions and instincts and ideas. ठीक है, आपको किसी की बात में आके, किसी के इन्फ्लुएंस में आके आपको एक्शंस नहीं लेने चाहिए. यू शुड फॉलो योर ओन इंस्टिंक्ट्स, योर ओन आइडियाज, एंड दैट्स व्हाई दिस कंसेप्ट ऑफ soul and oversoul has been focused upon in this work. ठीक है, and Emerson in this particular work mentions that the great man is he who have a mindset of his own. Okay, and he keeps a crowd aside and he follows the perfect sweetness and independence of solitude. So this was something, the idea which was put by Emerson in this work, Self-Reliance, and he has also touched upon the fact that man must be dependent on himself rather than other people. ठीक है, मैन को इंडिपेंडेंट बनना है एंड डिपेंडेंट नहीं बनना है. इंडिपेंडेंट किससे बनना है? द क्राउड, द सोसाइटी. ठीक है, एंड डिपेंडेंट खुद पे होना है, बिकॉज यू शुड फॉलो योर ओन इंस्टिंक्ट्स, योर ओन आइडियाज, योर ओन माइंडसेट, एंड यू शुड नॉट गेट इन्फ्लुएंस्ड बाय अदर्स पीपल एक्शंस एज वेल एज थॉट्स. Is this clear? Any problem? Okay, let's move to the next work, that is Henry David Thoreau. ठीक है, Henry David Thoreau की बात करते हैं, because बहुत जम्बल्ड हो रहा है. Please make a note of it that this is the second writer, this was the first writer, and the next work says that Walden Life in the Woods. Okay, so basically this work Walden Life in the Woods is also considered as the personal declaration of independence. Okay, it has been considered as personal declaration of independence. So here what happens, this particular Henry Walden Thoreau has went on a pond named as this Walden was a pond where he went over there and he resided, and he wanted to stay in communion with nature, leaving all the comforts behind. And this was the question which was asked in your examination as well, in whose house Walden, or you can say Henry David Thoreau stayed in Walden. It was Emerson's house. किसके हाउस में रहा था? Emerson के हाउस में रहा था. And this is the question कि किसका वो हाउस था? It was the house of Emerson. Please make a note of it because it is a previous year question. Okay, and this work Walden Life in the Woods is also known as a social experiment. It is also known as social experiment. Fine. Okay, so जो Walden है Life in the Woods, इसका सबटाइटल है, सबटाइटल आपको याद रखना है. एंड इसको क्या बोला गया? इसको बोला गया है पर्सनल डिक्लेरेशन ऑफ इंडिपेंडेंस एंड अ सोशल experiment. Okay, and वो किसके हाउस में रहा था? He stayed in the house of Emerson in that particular pond Walden. ठीक है, and the best of the you can say the reflection upon simple living on natural surroundings. ठीक है, so it was kind of a reflection on the natural surroundings. आप सारे comforts को, सारे सारे जो आपको जो privileges मिले हैं, you leave behind and come to nature as a kind of a person staying in communion to nature. And this kind of a work, as I told you, it was a personal declaration of independence, and it was a social experiment as well, and it is also known as the voyage of spiritual discovery. Okay, जब आप पूरा अपने आप को सारे शौक, when you just leave around your, the good times, your comforts, then why you actually leave these things? Because you go on a journey of self discovery. Okay, you just want to have a spiritual communion with nature. So that's why this work is also known as the voyage of spiritual discovery, and it is actually a kind of you can say the manifesto, or you can say the manual for self reliance. ठीक है, so कितने सारे मैंने आपको टाइटल्स बता दिए हैं. ये मैनुअल ऑफ सेल्फ रिलायंस भी बोला जाता है, ठीक है, एंड इट इज ऑल्सो नोन एज जर्नी ऑफ स्पिरिचुअल डिस्कवरी, और यू कैन से जर्नी और वॉयज ऑफ स्पिरिचुअल डिस्कवरी. Okay, please make a note of it. These are all the important points. Okay, please. Yes, thank you, Devendra, for confirming, because I'm not able to actually change the slide and make the blank slide. So that's why I'm covering all the slide in this particular, all the points in this particular slide, and it might come out to be messy, but what I'm just reciting, please you can write over there. Okay, इसको क्या बोला जाता है? इसको बोला जाता है social experiment, personal declaration of independence, manual of self reliance, and journey or voyage of spiritual independence. ठीक है, spiritual discovery. ठीक है, spiritual discovery. Fine. These are the four, you can say, the alternate titles of the work, Walden, Life in the Wood. There's an American poet, Robert Frost, जिसने वॉल्डन के लिए बोला था कि दिस इज वन बुक दैट सरपास एवरीथिंग दैट वी हैव इन लिटरेचर. ठीक है, तो उसने अमेरिकन मूवमेंट को, ट्रांसडेंटलिज्म को बेस्ट डिस्क्राइब जिस बुक ने करा है, दैट इज वॉल्डन. दैट्स व्हाई रॉबर्ट फ्रॉस्ट हैज सेड दिस फॉर दिस बुक, one book that has surpassed everything we have in America, and that is Walden. Fine. Next writer is Margaret Fuller. So Margaret Fuller is a very important writer again, and just you have to remember the title of her works. Summer on the Lakes, Women in the 19th Century. ठीक है, इनके सब टाइटल्स आपको याद करने, इतने ज़्यादा डिटेल में आपसे नहीं पूछा जाता है. And in the work called as Women in the 19th Century, here what happens? So here she argues that humanity will come only when we are communion to nature, and the beauty is suited of the world and heaven when freedom is given to women. ठीक है, जब beauty in the heaven कब आएगी? When the beauty of the world will actually be equal to the beauty of heaven, when the freedom will be provided to women equal to the man in in all the spheres. ठीक है, in social, economic, personal, सब spheres में women को freedom equal to man देना चाहिए. Then only the world will be beautiful as heaven. So this was the idea which was put forward by Margaret Fuller and Women in the 19th Century. Okay, any problem? You can just post in the chat box. Next. Nathaniel Hawthorne. ठीक है, he is also known as Puritan of Salem. So basically Salem की story क्या आती है? Salem has been divided into Salem rural and Salem urban. ठीक है, so what happened when the people started moving towards the urban areas? So people started getting better picture of the town life. Okay, so this and when these they were actually these rural people used to add taxes from the town people, and when the town people refused to pay the taxes to the rural people, then the people of the rural Salem started accusing these people of witchcraft. ठीक है, so witchcraft was very much famous topic, or you can say the theme of the novels of Nathaniel Hawthorne, and his grandfather was also a witchcraft person. ठीक है, or you can say the witch hunter. ठीक है, who used to practice witchcraft. Fine. And he was basically influenced by writers like Scott, Spencer. So these are writers have a great influence on the life of Nathaniel Hawthorne. ठीक है, and that's why he was a Puritan, and he is known as the Puritan of Salem. He is also known as the romancer of Puritanism. ठीक है, इसको romancer of Puritanism भी बोला जाता है. Fine, and he was a moralist writer. Similarly, if you just go back to the Puritan age of British literature, you must have noticed that these writers used to advocate the moral values, the social norms, how the person should be righteous in the particular society. ठीक है, so ये सब चीज़ें Puritan writers भी बोलते थे, and they you want that people should be religious, people should follow God, and their writings should also be influenced by the religious notions. ठीक है, similarly Nathaniel Hawthorne भी Puritan था, बट ये प्यूरिटन ब्रिटिश सोसाइटी का नहीं था, ये अमेरिकन सोसाइटी का था. दैट एंड ही वाज यूज्ड टू लिव इन सलेम, एंड दैट्स व्हाई ही इज नोन एज द प्यूरिटन ऑफ सलेम एंड रोमांसर ऑफ प्यूरिटिज्म. व्हाई? बिकॉज ही यूज्ड टू एक्चुअली शो और एडवोकेट द सेंटिमेंट्स ऑफ द प्यूरिटन पीपल. ठीक है, दैट्स व्हाई ही इज नोन एज रोमांसर ऑफ प्यूरिटानिज्म. Any problem? You can just post in the chat box. Okay, let's come to the his works, The Scarlet Letter and House of Seven Gables. ठीक है, तो ये उसके कुछ important works है, and you just have to remember that in his writing dark romanticism बहुत ज़्यादा portray होता था. He was a propensier of the dark romanticism. And what is the dark romanticism? Basically, dark romanticism deals with it draws attentions to the very unintended consequences or complications that arose from some, kind of, you can say that efforts, or you can say the social reforms. So this kind of a romanticism was actually displayed in the works of Nathaniel Hawthorne, that is dark romanticism. And he used to also show the Gothic side. ठीक है, गॉथिज्म भी इसकी वर्क्स पे काफ़ी देखा जाता था, एंड ही यूज्ड टू बी वेरी मच फैसिनेटेड विद एक्चुअली पोर्ट्रेइंग द सुपरनैचुरल एंड द गॉथिक साइड, और यू कैन से द गॉथिक जॉनरा इन हिज वर्क्स. फाइन, लेट्स मूव टू द नेक्स्ट वर्क. फर्स्ट इज द स्कारलेट लेटर. So you must have studied about Scarlet Letter. So can you just name the character, the protagonist of the Scarlet Letter in the chat box if you have studied about Scarlet Letter? Who was the protagonist? Because it's a very famous work, so you must be knowing the answer to it. Who was the main protagonist of the Scarlet Letter? Okay, so let me tell you the story of Scarlet Letter. Basically what happens, the Scarlet Letter was written by this Nathaniel Hawthorne, and one of the famous classical writing of the American literature, and it is kind of an inquiry towards the nature of American Puritanism and the New England consequences. So like in Puritan age, women was not given the right to actually speak in front of the patriarchal society. Similarly, the same notion of American Puritanism and the New England consequences or conscience has been actually depicted in this work, The Scarlet Letter, and it portrays the story of the 17th century Puritan England. So कहाँ किस टाइम पे सेट है ये? 17th century Puritan England. तो आपने देखा होगा जो एजेस है, इट इज गोइंग पैरेलल टू द ब्रिटिश एज. ठीक है, सो दैट्स व्हाई यू शुड रिमेंबर द डिस्टिंक्शन बिटवीन द सेम पीरियड ऑफ द टू डिफरेंट लिटरेचर. ठीक है, सो एज आई टोल्ड यू, इन दिस पर्टिकुलर एज अनलाइक ब्रिटिश लिटरेचर, नेचर तो डिपिक्ट होता ही था, साथ ही साथ ग्लोरिफिकेशन ऑफ द अमेरिकन सोसाइटी भी होता था, एंड हियर द ग्लोरिफिकेशन ऑफ प्यूरिटन सोसाइटी वाज देयर. Okay, so this was actually set in 17th century Puritan England, and Hester Prynne is basically a woman who has been portrayed, and why she was condemned in the society, she was hated, she was condemned in the society to or you can say having committed adultery. Okay, and because she has committed adultery and she has made out of wedlock, she is made to wear a red letter A. ठीक है, उसको कौन सा लेटर पकड़ा wear करवाया, that is letter A, and this A was a symbol of adultery. ठीक है, it was a symbol of adultery. Fine. In the initial days, it was symbol of adultery. Then it also came out to be Abel, and then an angel. ठीक है, angel, Abel, and adultery. This was a question. of Ned कि जो एज सिंबल था हेस्टन प्राइन के जो यहाँ पे it was engraved and it was symbol of adultery, Abel and an angel. And because she has committed adultery in the absence of her husband who were assumed to be Roger Chillingworth, so she has committed adultery with a man named Arthur Dimston, who was a renowned minister who actually turned to be later the Hester's lover. And in the end of the novel, what happens? The lover dies in Hester's arms, confessing his sin. Okay, so when he confessed his sin, that's why she was taken as angel. But before his confessing of sin, she was taken as adulterous woman, and the symbol adultery was there. Okay. Next is House of Seven Gables. So this is again a very important work of Nathaniel Hawthorne, and you should remember that it is a deeply rooted in England and its own family history. Okay, and it deals with the you can say the consequences or the problems of hereditary guilt of Pychian family. So this Pychian family has been depicted in this particular work. ठीक है, so you just remember किस family से deal करा गया था, dealt with the Pychian family. Okay, let's move ahead now. Have you noted it? So let's move ahead. Okay, Walt Whitman. Now let's talk about Walt Whitman. So Walt Whitman is again a very important writer of this particular age, and he is also known as the poet laureate of democracy. Please remember this thing because ये titles भी आपसे एग्जाम में पूछे जाते हैं कि what is actually Walt Whitman known as? He is known as the poet laureate of democracy. And एक और टाइटल उसको कन्फर करा गया है, that is गांधी ऑफ अमेरिका. उसको गांधी ऑफ अमेरिका भी बोला जाता है वॉल्ट विटमैन को. प्लीज मेक अ नोट ऑफ दिस बोथ नेम्स. ओके, नाउ फर्स्ट इज लीव्स ऑफ ग्रास. ओके, so Walt Whitman is again a very important writer, and उसने कुछ works लिखे that are again influenced by nature, and he has written a poetry collection Leaves of Grass, and which is often actually considered as the and because of Leaves of Grass he has been known as a father of free words. ठीक है, इसको father of free words भी बोलते हैं. It is a kind of writing free words जिसको Whitman ने popularize करा था in American literature. That's why he is known as the father of free words. Okay, fine. Also, this work Leaves of Grass is also known as Bible of Democracy. तो इसमें अमेरिकन लिटरेचर में आपको तो डेप्थ ऑफ द वर्क पे नहीं जाना होता है, आपको ये सब टाइटल्स उनको क्या बोला गया ये सब आपको ज़्यादा फोकस करना है. दैट्स व्हाई आई एम जस्ट टेलिंग यू ऑल दीज थिंग्स. सो दिस लीव्स ऑफ ग्रास इज नोन एज बाइबल ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी, एंड इन दिस पर्टिकुलर work he has shown his glorification, he has shown about his life, and he has sung about his life. ठीक है, so that's why this work is a kind of a considered as a Bible of democracy. And in this particular work Leaves of Grass he has sung about his age. So यहाँ पे क्वेश्चन पूछा गया था कि जब ये विटमिन ने वर्क लिखा था glorifying his age, what was his age? It was 37. ये आपका क्वेश्चन है नेट का प्रीवियस ईयर्स का, so please make a note of it. He was in the age of 37. Okay, is this clear? And you should just remember that basically in the initial years when the publication was there of Leaf of Grass, in the beginning it was considered obscene, but Whitman called for actually abolition of slavery, but later called it is the kind of a threat to democracy. And his so this work was you should just remember that it was criticized in the beginning, but later on it was considered as the abolition, or you can say the reaction towards the abolition of slavery. ठीक है, next is Drum Tap. It is a poetry collection by Whitman. You just have to remember that it is a kind of a poetry. ठीक है, it is a poetry. Then Oh Captain, My Captain, When the Lilacs Bloom in Dorian Bloom, and This Dust Was Once the Man. These are considered to be the famous poem which was written after the death of Lincoln. As I told you, in the American Civil War, when Lincoln won the presidential election, then slavery was actually abolished from America. So that's why in the most of the works of Whitman, Lincoln has been a celebrated figure, and not only in Whitman poetry, in many other works by different American writer, Lincoln has been celebrated. Okay, so when the Lincoln died, okay, so after the death of Lincoln, Whitman has written 4 poems. Okay, there's one more poem, Hushed Be the Campus of Day. Okay, so this is something like a poem is there, hushed be the camps today. This is the full title, Hushed be the camps today. Okay, yes, so this work with the when the lilacs last in the dooryard bloom, this dust was once the man, oh captain, my captain. These are all written by after the death of Lincoln, and these 4 poems were grouped together as the President Lincoln's burial hymn. क्या बोला गया है इसको? President Lincoln burial hymns. ठीक है, तो जस्ट रिमेंबर कि ये एक कैटेगरी थी जिसमें विटमैन ने 4 पोएम लिखी है. ओ कैप्टन माय कैप्टन, व्हेन लाइलैक्स लास्ट इन द डोरयार्ड ब्लूम, दिस डस्ट वाज मैड एंड हर्श्ड बी द कैंप्स टुडे, एंड दीज टुगेदर नोन एज द प्रेसिडेंट लिंकन्स बरियल हिम. ऑल्सो प्लीज रिमेंबर दैट ये जो क्वेश्चन इसमें आ चुका है, ओ कैप्टन माय कैप्टन, देन हु वाज द कैप्टन रेफरिंग टू? इट वाज रेफरिंग टू लिंकन. ठीक है, अब्राहम लिंकन को वो रेफर कर रहे थे. Is this clear? Have you noted down? Okay, so this was all about today's class. So I've tried to discuss or touch upon the basic writers of the American literature. एक और क्लास लूंगी मैं मंडे को, and then that I will be discussing the remaining writers of the American literature. Okay, so I hope you have found this lecture useful and have made the special notes, because इसमें ज़्यादा मैंने बताया कि आपको वर्क्स के डेप्थ में नहीं जाना होता है. Sometimes you just have to remember the main theme, the important, and sometimes only the title. ठीक है, जिसकी स्टोरी आपको जाननी है उसके मैंने आपको शॉर्ट फॉर्म में स्टोरी भी बताई है, एंड प्लीज रीड द फुल स्टोरी लाइक ऑफ स्कारलेट लेटर, अंकल टॉम्स कैबिन, इनके बारे में डिटेल में आपसे पूछा जाता है. ठीक है, सो आई होप यू हैव एंजॉयड द लेक्चर, and please stay tuned for the 1 PM session as well. In that I will be discussing the important question, previous year's question that we have been asked in your NET exam. Okay, so if you have liked this lecture, if you have found this lecture important and useful for your preparation, then please like it, comment your views, and also subscribe to the channel for more such updates. Okay, so I bid farewell to you students, and please take care of yourself.